Hi. So here's the big question of the day. Who is in charge of immigration into the United Kingdom? Is it the judges, the bewigged buffoons, as I'd call them? Is it the government, whoever they are? And let's face it, they've all had problems. Or is it Charlie Caroli, the clown, Coco, the clown? Just who is in charge? It's a complete and utter mess. I just had a tweet from one of my listeners, Lenny. He says, that's a simple question to answer. After the chicken nugget story, it's clearly a clown. Thank you for that on Twitter. So you can join in any way you fancy, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And don't forget, if you're listening to this later as a podcast or watching on repeat, you can always send me an email or do a comment on YouTube and I'll pick up on it on the next one. But I've got to ask this question. I've sat there today. I've watched Prime Minister's questions as well. It's ludicrous. Who is in charge? Let's go through another few weird stories that are related to this at the moment, because let's start with the Labour's new border czar. He wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it. He was going to get he is getting £130,000 a year. But wait for it. He wants to work from home in Finland. Not exactly an easy commute, is it? This bloke is meant to be in charge. He knew what the job was. The job was to control our borders. But he wants to live in Finland. Now, in Prime Minister's questions, Starmer basically said, well, he's not doing that now. We've told him. But it was typical lawyer speech. I'm not sure if Starmer's reversed the decision, but he wouldn't have done if there hadn't been a load of trouble about it in this morning's papers and indeed on the radio and on telly. And of course, on the most important thing, social media. What buffoon in government thought it was ever possible that this man could work from home and still pick up 130 grand? We shouldn't be surprised, though, should we? Because most of the civil service are sitting on their lardy arses at home. It's become an utter joke. But if you're in charge of border control, don't we want something like a cross between John Wayne and RoboCop? Don't we have to be a bit like Donald Trump and the way that he's cut it massively? I think it's a 95% cut in the amount of people who are trying to get in from South America, from Mexico into Texas. How's he done it? He's put troops on the border and he's put drones up and he's done a massive propaganda campaign. And he's told them in Mexico, you come, you're going straight back. You are not going to be able to stay in America. You're going to have to go through the proper channels. Whereas what do? We just let them come over the bloody channel. That's what we do. It's crazy. So how this man thought he could be in charge from Finland. I know it's a back office job on one level, but it isn't, is it? It's like being a chief constable. Although, don't get me started on them. Look at Rowley. What an idiot he is in charge of the Met. You've got to be seen by your men and women. We need a strong border force. And this ties into what we were watching on the telly yesterday. All these people who they're deporting. Did you see it? 19,000 people they deported since they came to power. And you think, oh, well, they're doing a really good job. Well, perhaps you don't when I tell you the next bit. Only 5,000 of those 19,000 illegal immigrants who have been deported since Starmer came to power by so-called enforced returns, only 5,000 of them have actually been caught by our people and sent back. The other 14,000, they wanted to go home and they were all getting 3 grand or 5 grand. That's why they've gone. They'll be back, though, won't they? It's about as much use as a chocolate fireguard. So Starmer is cosplaying, is how I would call it. A kind of combination of Nigel Farage and indeed Donald Trump. He's trying to look tough, but he's messing it up again. We want the truth. And I'm not going to just have a go at Starmer today, because successive governments have failed to address the problem of illegal migration. And the boats, it shouldn't be a problem to stop. But you can't stop it from blooming Finland, can you? What we need to do is, and I saw those people going up on the plane, and I thought, God, it's like being on the sun again. The government are listening to me. I said ages and ages ago, the best way to put off people from coming to our great country illegally across the channel is to video us deporting people, dragging them up the steps of a plane. And I did my whole bit about bye-bye, Stelios, jocks away, Stelios. I said, if you did that and videoed it, it would go throughout the globe or around Calais so quickly, because every single one of these people, men, who are basically, they're all men, aren't they, who are trying to get in the country via the small boats, the majority of them are men, they've all got a mobile phone. Not just a mobile phone, a brick, a Nokia. No. They've got a smartphone. So if you video deporting people, yeah, this is part of Trump's idea. Send the really bad criminals to El Salvador, send some of the illegals to Guantanamo. I mean, I suppose that was the idea with Rwanda, although it was just a bit far-fetched for my liking. But, you know, we could send them, I don't know, Orkney. No, Orkney's too beautiful. But we could send them to the Falklands or South Georgia. You'd only have to send a couple of plane loads and it would stop. It would diminish dramatically. That's what needs to happen. But what Starmer's done, and of course, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who must have agreed to this bloke working from home in Finland, being in charge of border security. Honestly, you couldn't make this up, could you? It's like a farce. It's an absolute farce. Anyway, I suppose it was her who had approved this idea that he could work from home. But if we didn't have the silly propaganda we had the other night, which has been disproved within a day, i.e. the vast majority, 2/3 of them, actually wanted to go home, that's not a deterrent. It's got to be dragging them up the steps. And I saw some liberal, uber liberal today. He was on GB News and he said, I'm not comfortable with it because I think what Labour are doing now is recreating the hostile environment that Theresa May did, and it's not good for society. You know, when she had those vans going around London saying, if you're illegal, we're going to deport you. Right? I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, because if you weren't illegal, you didn't have a problem. It wasn't racist. It was just plain common sense. When you hear there's over 1 million illegals living in London alone, it's got to be addressed. There's only two ways of addressing it. You start deporting them and get hard on it, or you give them all an amnesty. Now, Boris Johnson, that's what he wanted to do. I think Sadiq Khan is quite keen on that. And I think most politicians are. So when I ask you the question, who's in charge of UK immigration, I don't think it is the government. I don't think they really care. Any government, Labour or indeed Conservative. And I don't think it's the judges, although we'll talk about those bewigged buffoons in a moment. And I don't even think it's a clown, because I think the people who should be in charge of it are us, the people. Why don't we have a referendum? Do people want to stop all immigration, legal and illegal, for a couple of years, which is my idea, till we get ourselves sorted? Or do you want to see really draconian clampdowns, kicking in nail bars? I mean, you can walk down any high street now, any high street, and not even a high street, where I live on an estate, right? There's 3 Turkish barbers, or calling themselves Turkish. I spoke to one of the guys. He was from Romania. I said, how long have you been here? And he said, what, this time? I said, yeah. And he said, I've been here a few months. He said, but I've been before. I was here for 3 or 4 years. I said, you have to getting leave to remain or citizenship? He said, no. I said, what do you mean, no? He said, why do I want to be a citizen of this country? That's what he said. I admired his honesty. He said, no, I'm quite happy coming, working and going back again. There is something drastically wrong with our immigration system. And it's mainly, I think, I mean, I work for big newspapers. They didn't really want to clamp down on it. They didn't want to clamp down on it. Where do they get their cheap labour? I don't think many businesses want to clamp down on it too much either. But it's us, the ordinary working people, working class people of this country, who it's really affected. And so I don't think it is a clown. I don't think it's the government, and I don't think it's the judges. I don't think anybody's in control. The Baron Flights, who is in charge of immigration? I'd guess no one. He's backing me up here. Maybe the question should be, who is benefiting from it? What a very good point. It isn't the taxpayer, that's for sure, Gaunty. All right, Gaunty, says Cigar Fingers. Hope you're good, mate. I'm fine, thank you. This Gaza scam must be stopped. Action, Starmer, not your usual bluster. Well, let's talk about that. That's the other story that's hit the fan this morning. A judge, a bewigged buffoon, as I call him, has overruled the government and allowed a Palestinian Gaza family to live here in the UK. Now, to be fair, this happened under the regime of the Tories. But he's used the Ukraine scheme. Now, this morning, everyone was panicking, saying this will open the floodgates. So wherever there's conflict in the world, these people will say, it's my human rights to have sanctuary. I'm coming to Britain. Starmer, again, has said he's going to close the loophole. But the point is, Starmer, and it's not just you or Yvette Useless Cooper, it's all of the politicians. Why is there a loophole? Why haven't you done these things correctly? The first duty of any government, of any political party, is the protection of its citizens. And I also believe if you haven't got strong borders, if you haven't got border control, you're not really a country. So like when the new liberals go on about, well, have an open door policy, why don't you just let everybody in? Yeah? Then you no longer act as a nation. Well, there's quite a few people in New Labour, and as I keep going on about the Common Purpose Brigade, who would quite like that, because they hate our history, our culture, our traditions. So they'd be quite happy for us just to be splurged, as they were with Brexit, into some kind of European superstate. That's not what I want. And I don't think that's what the British public want. I think the British public want strong borders. That doesn't mean the British public want a halt to all immigration. And it certainly doesn't mean the British public aren't appreciative of the fact that some immigration, well-controlled, managed immigration, has been good for this great nation of ours. Because it has. But what people don't want, and what gets really, if you want to know, Mr. Starmer, I'm not going to call you sir anymore, Mr. Starmer, what really gets on working people's TITSs, it's when they think someone is taking the Michael. Somebody is taking the Mickey out of our nation, either in benefits or the fact that they get healthcare straight away, or they can bring their family in. And that's why this morning, did you see the other nonsense they put out? That to become a British citizen, if you've come by boat, you're going to have to be here for 10 years or something. Like I just said, the Romanian barber who I spoke to, he doesn't want to become a citizen because he can work here anyway. That's not going to put people off. And again, this is smoke and mirrors, because Starmer's bright. He's intelligent. He must know. But the problem with him and loads of people in government, you look at how many people in government now are lawyers on all the benches or solicitors. They come from a legal background. And so they believe totally in the excesses of the human rights and the ECHR. And I used to say, come on, we don't need to get rid of it, because parts of that are very, very important. And the human rights thing, of course, was put together by Churchill and his ilk after the Second World War. And the idea of protecting people is a good thing, and free speech and the rest of it. However, it's mutated into something that bewigged buffoons, judges, can use against us. I don't think there could be one person in this country who thinks it's okay for the judge to say, well, we did it for Ukraine. Where are you from? Gaza. Yeah, you can come as well. Why would you let anybody in from Gaza at the moment? I think we made a mistake allowing all the Syrians in. And on another note, by the way, now that Assad has been removed, why aren't they all going back? Why are they still staying here? Do you see what I'm getting at? We should be a refuge. We should be a place where people can come to flee from terror. But we can't just be a big, soft sponge. If you want to join in, feel free. Just put your comments on and I'll read them out. Seasider Mark, I heard today that a judge has given the green light for people from Gaza to move into the UK now, if they want to. We're fast becoming the open door hostel for the world. Well, that's what we're talking about, Seasider. You're right. One starts, and the way British law works, it works on precedent. So one person gets in under that case law, there'll suddenly be a flood of them. Although Starmer says he's going to close that loophole. There's some breaking news on that, by the way, so I'll talk about it in a minute. Regan and Carter, John, some of the asylum hotels, my niece lost a job of 5 years when they took over an 18th century hotel. All the weddings were cancelled, events, etc., all made unemployed for the sake of these illegal spongers. Well, that's harsh language. I don't necessarily think they're all spongers, but they are illegal because they shouldn't be in the country. What do they call them? They don't want to call them illegal anymore. They want to call them, they've got another word because they don't want to say they're breaking the law. They've broken the law by getting in. And don't forget, it's not just the people in the boats. It's the people in the back of lorries. It's the students who are overstaying. It's the whole situation. And I think you're right there, Regan and Carter. The level of you saying, sorry, I'm just looking for this BBC story I wanted to read to you as well. I think you're right that they see it and they think they can get here. And, you know, it's the land of milk and honey. And so that's why they come. I mean, that's why some people are against the RNLI picking them up in the channel. I'm not. I am fed up of them acting like a taxi service. But what else can they do? Their job is to save lives. But I want to tie this in now with this story on the BBC website, broke just before I came on air. Still taking your views, if you've got any. Who's in charge of immigration? Judges, government, or a clown? I think it's all of them. All of them aren't in charge. This is about the killing of Sir David Amess. Do you remember? The MP. Look at this headline. Sir David Amess killer left Prevent too quickly. Just like Axel up in Southport, it's Prevent and the uber liberals who run it who have cocked up again by the look of it. So David, I'll read this from the BBC. This is the BBC's website. So even they're running these stories now, although I noticed they didn't run the story about Gaza this morning, and they also haven't run the other story that I've mentioned so far. But anyway, so David Amess's killer was exited, what does that mean? From the government's Prevent anti-terror program, I quote, too quickly, and its handling of him was suboptimal. Suboptimal, a review says. That's putting it lightly. He got slashed to death. It's hardly suboptimal, just like Axel up in Southport. Was that suboptimal, you clown? No. What it was a brutal, sadistic slaying of young children because idiots who will never be held accountable. They've even tried to hide the name of the judge of that little girl who got killed. Sarah Sharif, her dad, got custody. They wouldn't tell us the name of the judge who did that. What a disgrace. They make these life-changing decisions. And then we had the couple in Nottingham, slaughtered on the streets of Nottingham, walking home. Where's their parents' justice? They've got their life sentence. Where's their justice? Because we care too much for the sadistic people who commit these horrendous crimes. And I don't care whether they're mental or not. We want them locked up. Somebody talked yesterday on my broadcast about the Tories, and they were wrong to close down the big sanatoriums on the outskirts of town. In Warwick, outside Coventry, there was a huge one there called Hatton. They turned it into a housing estate. You couldn't make this up either. It's now a housing estate, and evidently it's haunted. And I'm sure there were terrible things that happened there. I'm sure. And I'm sure some people got put in there who shouldn't have been, and that's wrong. Yeah? Girls used to get put in there, for example, if they got pregnant outside of wedlock. That's all disgusting. But my mate Brett, God rest his soul, he died a year ago. He was a psychiatric nurse, sports psychologist, one of my biggest friends, died all of a sudden. It was just terrible. And I'm not really over it, to be honest with you. But he was quite liberal on one level. But on the other level, he used to say to me about the sanitariums, because he worked there. He worked at Hatton. He did work in the community with people because of the rising tide of mental health problems. However, he said, no, you need he called them bins. He said, you need the big bins because some people need locking up for their own safety and for the safety of others. Thatcher started it. She closed them down, or the Tories closed them down. Labour have just allowed this to continue, then the Tories again. But we do need places where these people can be locked up, treated, but locked up. Are you with me or against me? Let's go back to David Amos. It goes on to this. Honestly, you can't believe this. Ali Harbury Ali, there's a surprise, who killed the Southend West MP in 2021, was referred to Prevent for 2 years. The Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, has told the Commons. He said the perpetrator, that's Ali Harbury Ali, had previously been referred to the Prevent programme and subsequently to the Specialist Channel programme between 2014 and 2016, between 5 and 7 years before the attack. The perpetrator of the attack on Sir David became known to Prevent in October 2014 when he was referred by his school after teachers identified a change in his behaviour. Oh, does that sound familiar? How many times was Axel found with a knife at school? I think you'll find it was 10 times. How many times was he referred to Prevent? 3 times. Ali was assigned an advisor and in 2015 assessed as a low terrorism risk and taken off the programme. Sir David's family, and I saw his daughter actually on GB News a few weeks ago, have formally complained about how Essex police handled the process. The minister said the report found record keeping was problematic and a rationale for certain decisions was not explicit. Responsibilities between police and local authorities were blurred, and the tool used for identifying an individual's vulnerability to radicalisation was outdated. And they think that'll be fine, do they? They think, oh, that's okay then. We can carry on with our lives. Apart from, it's almost word for word what they've been saying about Axel. How come these organisations like Prevent can't do their job? If you couldn't do your job, not on that level, but even on a minor level, you'd get the bullet. I mean, he deserves the bullet anyway. So does Axel, as you know my views on that. But they're playing Russian roulette with us. And meanwhile, so back to our main part of the debate today, which is immigration, they're letting in all these men. I used to think that was a cliche. Oh, they're men of fighting age. I thought, oh, come on, you're just trying to wind it up. But when you look at it, that's what they are. And when you go to those hotels, there was a report today about one of the famous Blackpool hotels. I think it was the Metropole. And for the last 4 years, it's been used by illegal migrants, asylum seekers, whatever you want to call it. Because the Home Office come along and they offer you a fortune. They say, I'll take 100% occupancy for the next 2 years. Well, if you are a hotelier, that's very hard to turn down. And these multinational companies definitely won't. There was another guy who was on GB News today. They didn't have him on. They had another guy, they had John Mappin on, who runs Tintagel Castle, basically, hotel. He was offered to do it, and he said no. But they were talking about another guy who they reckon has become a billionaire off the back of this trade in humans. Because that's what it is, isn't it? He's opened all these refugee hotels. Eamon Holmes was saying there's 17 hotels in Belfast, which are now just for migrants. The hotel in Rugby, just outside Rugby, my beautiful sister-in-law got married at. We had a lovely wedding. Very expensive place to get married. They took it over. All the signs come down. So you drive past it. It's like a ghost town. There's one in Warwick, very close to Hatton, to that mental institution I was telling you about. It's now an asylum hotel. There's over 240 of them all over the country. And I can't see how that's going to go down unless we get tough. Why don't we deport them as soon as they put their feet on the sand? Okay, give them some new clothes if they're wet, be humane, but bang, straight back on a boat. Whoa, you're going back. Not to Barbados, you're going back to Calais. And then you can make your own way home from there, or the French can deal with you. Because for too long, we've put up with the French going, go on you come, on you come. Where are the thousands of men of fighting age, says Seasider, future's wives going to come from? I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's just nonsense what is going on. So, gone off the track a bit there with the David Amos story, but the things are connected because the uber liberals who are in charge, and by that I mean the political establishment, none of this affects them. I don't think judges live next door to these asylum seekers. I shouldn't think their kids have got problems in the schools because of the types of schools that they go to. Meanwhile, we've got a judiciary that thinks it's above, absolutely thinks it's above our politicians. So we elect our politicians to do what we want. Now, there's the first fault. They don't, do they? But British people, whenever they're polled about this subject, about immigration, and this is, again, the uber liberals hate this. We don't want any more. There's too much. We certainly don't want people coming in who we don't know who they are. We haven't vetted them. We don't know where they're coming from. They are of fighting age. They bring over cultural habits, doctrines that we're not comfortable with. Why should we put up with it? That's not fascist. That's not racist. So we want it stopped. So then our politicians basically pay lip service to that. And even when we've got a rule there, like this thing about, we'll let the Ukrainians in, our government and the British public were fine with that. Just like they were fine with the Ugandan Asians all those years ago, the Kenyans. We are a very welcoming, tolerant nation. We are not racist. But we don't like people taking the P1SS out of us, do we? Which is what people think is happening now. So we want it stopped. We want these people returned. What we don't want is propaganda films on the BBC saying 19,000 people have been deported, because that's not the true story. 5,000 people have been deported. The other 14,000 have passed the exit or passed go and picked up a big wodge of money to go back to Jamaica or Eastern Europe. That's what's happened. And then we've got judges. So we've got this particular judge and obviously the lawyers who represented this family from Gaza who said, well, that's your human rights. We could use the Ukraine story. So they've used Ukraine to get the rest of the family in. That's not right, is it? Because Ukraine was a special circumstance. And I think it's right to say, if you don't stamp on that, which now Starmer says he's going to, so we'll wait and see, it would open the floodgates. And these parasites, these leeches in the human rights profession will just continue to make money. Now, I don't believe the judges should have the final say. I think our parliament should. And if our parliament says this is the criteria, there should not be loads and loads of appeals and smart-bottomed lawyers making a fortune out of it. Do you agree with me or do you disagree? Let me know. John@johngaunt.com, or get on Twitter, get on Facebook, comment now, because I'll be stopping soon. But I want your views. I just think our politicians, although they're useless, should have precedence over the judges. And I've had enough of judges doing this. Have you? I understand about judges and the law being separated. I understand that. But when it comes to immigration, surely the people of the country, the people who are going to be paying all the benefits for these people, have a right to be heard, and we're not being heard. And that's why it's a powder keg. That's why Southport erupted. It could have been stopped. I don't think it would have been stopped completely. There were some people who were hell bent on trouble. But why aren't we addressing it? Sir Keir Starmer, okay, today he's done something quite remarkable, saying, the guy who wants to be in charge of border security, he will live in Britain. Oh, that was the other thing. And he wants to work 4 days a week. Mind you, that's the MPs. They only want to work 4 days a week. It's just a cracker what's going on. You couldn't make it up. But I'm saying Parliament must come above the law. You with me or against me? The problem with them being picked up by lifeboats is their status changes from illegal to undocumented passenger. This means they can't be processed for removal, says Lord Kilbacker. Is that true? I can see that. This is me being kind. Large warehouses with tents and basic facilities to house these people. Call in the army in to check the circumstances, face scans, fingerprints, then deport. Well, I agree with that. But you won't have that. The Human Rights Brigade will have you up against a wall. They'll kill you with their kindness for saying things like that. But that's fine. They won't even check the dental records of some of these people. That's why we ended up with kids with beards bigger than Santa Claus in our schools. Oh, yeah, I'm only 14. Started shaving last week. There was the one down at the seaside town. I can't remember, was it Brighton? He was in with some foster parents. They'd fostered loads of people. But this one, he decided to repay their kindness by building a bomb in the kitchen. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? Do you remember that? It's just a joke. Just an absolute joke. And I don't see why large warehouses couldn't be used. There's plenty of them, isn't there? If there was a natural disaster, you see this in America when there's the floods and stuff, they take over a football stadium, an indoor football stadium, or basketball courts. Why can't that happen? Why should they be in hotels? Going back to that one in Blackpool, the Metropole, they were talking about the economic impact that's had on the town of Blackpool. Just simple things like people aren't going to the shows because the tourists aren't coming because they know they're there and they're scared of them. And then you've got, the slot machines and the penny arcades. These people aren't using those facilities. So the whole business of the town, the whole economy begins to collapse. Because, of course, don't forget, these people don't get a load of money. I think it's 30 quid a week or something. So there's no net economic benefit. It's all net loss to the British taxpayer and the local businesses. None of this new legislation Labour is proposing will apply to those picked up by lifeboats. Okay, you're off on one now, Led. I understand. You've made a very good point. Thank you for that. But so, look, if we agree, and I don't know, maybe you don't agree, that the politicians have got to come before the judges, that it's got to be the decision of our parliament. But then our MPs must listen to us. And we are fed up of it. And I don't know about you, I want to see tough action. I want to see the doors of nail bars being kicked in. I want to see the so-called Turkish barbers dragged out by their buns on the top of their heads. What's wrong with that? They are taking the mickey. And why in all these places, admittedly, not the one I went to the other day, but most of them, you can only pay cash. What's that about? Well, you'd have to be a moron not to know what that's about. It's about money laundering. So they say they're a cash business so they can put loads of cash through it. We are being taken for mugs. That's before I get on to the amount of people who have been seeking asylum, have fled their countries because of danger or because they're homosexual or whatever, and then go back on holiday there, go back to see their relatives. Again, you couldn't make it up. We need a tough Home Secretary, not somebody like Yvette Cooper, who clearly lied and misled the British public about Axel in Southport. She knew what he was. She knew what his background was. But she allowed the riots to happen. And then she and two-tier Keir condemned ordinary, mostly white Brits as far-right thugs. They have divided the country massively, massively. And if they don't get on top of it, there's going to be real trouble on the streets of Britain. I don't want that to happen. And I would say to everybody, don't do that. But that's where we're getting to, because the politicians aren't listening to the public. Why do you think Nigel Farage is getting traction? Because he's basically saying what people think. Although some people think not enough, because he won't support Tommy Robinson, will he? But we need to address this. We need to address the issue of, is Tommy Robinson a political prisoner or not? And have that debate openly so that people can contribute to it. So then whatever verdict we, the British public, come to is one that we can kind of sign up to. I mean, I know he showed the film. He was in contempt of court. He was. That's undeniable. But does that deserve the sentence he's got? And yes, he's in solitary because of what he said about Muslims. But is that fair? Is that right? Is that reasonable? What about his human rights? So who's got the final say on UK immigration? The government, judges, or external forces? Well, obviously Europe has, with the European human rights thing. So we've got to get rid of that. We've got to come out of that, number one. Legal challenges in human rights law is shaping immigration policy, and that's got to stop. The UK government has lost control of its border policies, hasn't got any policies. How would you possibly employ the guy who you want to secure our borders and allow him to suggest, well, yeah, I live in Finland, you see, so I only want to work 4 days a week. And when I do work, the rest of the time, I'm going to be in Finland. Is that okay? Somebody, and we need to know who, probably Yvette Cooper, thought that was okay. It was only when these MPs questioned him yesterday or the day before, yeah, that this has come out. And now there's a hoo-ha, and rightly so. Are they trying to tell me there isn't some ex-coppers, top coppers, proper coppers? I'll tell you what I'd have is the guy who used to run the Met. I used to interview Kevin. God, I must get Kevin on the programme, actually. We need somebody like him, a proper hard copper in charge of the border, don't we? You want to be scared. Have you ever been to Miami Airport? I remember the first time I went, somebody said to me, you don't take the mickey there. And whatever you do, don't take any oranges in because they'll have you. I thought they were taking the mickey out of me. But God, those people were brutal. Brutal. Even when you're not breaking their laws. And rightly so. They want to protect their agriculture. They want to protect their country. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're employed to do. None of this namby-pamby rainbow laces. Oh, let's everybody come in. No. No. So I think we're in a bad position. And I think at the moment, it probably is clowns who are running our policy. But these clowns are right across the political spectrum. It's not just the latest clowns. It's not like, oh, send in the clowns. They're already here, because they are. They're all the same. They're not putting our needs first. And that's the difference. So when he stops cosplaying Trump, Starmer, and the rest of them, because they're all at it, when they just start saying, no, we're going to be tough. We're going to make Britain great again. And we're going to do that first and foremost by securing our borders and knowing who's in the country and are they contributing and do they want to stay here and do they sign up to what we are? Why are we allowing people to come in and basically just denigrate our whole way of life? I'm a Brit through and through. I think I've got a right to say, well, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that. I haven't got a right, though, to say, and I'm going to kill you if you don't agree with me. I don't like democracy. I'm going to go and stab an MP and then I'll get put on prevent, but I'll be okay. It's just a complete and utter joke. And that's a very good point, Laird. He says, I wonder why that guy who's in charge of border security decided to move to law-abiding, safe, secure, boarded Finland. Yeah, I do wonder. It's a very good point. It's like Denmark. Denmark became a hellhole. They've now tightened their borders and they got their immigration down to 800 people, didn't they? That's what needs to happen here. We need to get on top of it. And places like where they were burning that, they were barbecuing a goat in the front garden. Was that in Birmingham? I'm like, these people need arrested. They need clearing off the street. Then they need re-education. Told, no, we don't do that here. You're not going to get away with that. End of story. You're not going to get away with behaving like that. Same as these kids who are shoplifting, going into Apple shops and just taking everything. Why aren't we stopping them? Like the kids on bikes who are nicking your Mobi phones. Why aren't the police stopping them? Because there's no will to stop them. And then people are surprised. I was going to talk about this today, and I decided not to. I thought I'd do this instead. Young people saying they're not proud to be British, or Britain is racist, or I wouldn't serve my country. Not really a surprise, is it? What is there to protect? What would you be protecting at the moment? It's a terrible state of affairs. Right. Anyway, thanks very much indeed for joining in. If you have live, that's been great. I'm not sure if I'm going to do one tomorrow, but I may. So keep an eye out. And then I am going to move them, I think, to 6 o'clock in the evening or 6:30 in the evening, so it becomes a regular slot. If you're listening on a podcast, try out John Gaunt TV on YouTube so you can see it in widescreen. I was amazed. I was looking at the statistics. How many people watch it on telly? I've been left behind by the YouTube revolution. But a lot of people now, I think the majority the other day, were watching it on the box. So there we go. Watch it wherever you want. Listen to it wherever you want. Listen again on the podcast. And if you want to contribute ideas, get in touch with me. And if you'd like to help me, as you see, I've got the little thing down the bottom, www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. That would really help as well. Just keeps me able to manufacture and produce these podcasts. I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing. I'm hoping that you find it stimulating. I hope that you see that you're not on your own. Many of us are really fed up. Lord Kilbracken says, nice one, Gaunty. Seaside and Mark says, keep up the good work. That's very kind of you. But if you think it's worthwhile, www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. Right, that's me done. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully. If not, it'll definitely be on Monday or maybe one over the weekend. But I'm meant to be going home tomorrow, so I need to think about that. Until we meet again, if you've got kids, that's not very relieved. Give them a kiss, give them a hug. Don't forget to tell them you love them. But we are being run by clowns. Run by clowns. It's a terrible, terrible position we're in. We can't even control our borders. But the guy they wanted to give the job to said he could do it in Finland. I give up.